In 2016, a charismatic young entrepreneur took the stage to save the world. His new technology, a hydrogen-powered truck, promised to save both money and the environment, in addition to disrupting the $1 trillion trucking industry, which is responsible for 1.2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. But this enthusiastic crowd didn't know that the presenter was a fraud and had a history of cheating friends, family, and members of his community out of every penny. So, if this venture to save the world sounds too good to be true, it's because it is. Trevor Milton, the founder of Nikola Motors, managed to launch and get funding for one of the world's most promising startups. And it was all a lie. How did he get away with it for so long? How did a door-to-door salesman create a $34 billion startup with no real idea or technology? Trevor Milton was born in Utah on April 6, 1982 to Bill Milton, a Union Pacific Railroad manager, and his wife, Sally Milton. Together, they had 2 sons, including Trevor, and 3 daughters. The first hit to the family came with Trevor's mother, who was diagnosed with cancer. Due to the treatment costs, years of financial hardship followed, but this didn't kill Trevor's spirit. He started his entrepreneurial journey by borrowing $20 from his father and buying candy to resell at school. In his own words, he made a killing to the point that the principal wanted to kick him out of elementary school. After he finished high school, Trevor went on an 18-month church mission to Brazil before spending some time in Puerto Rico and learning Spanish. After his return, what followed were a series of ventures and businesses that would set him up to found Nikola Motors, his greatest, perhaps riskiest idea yet. After dropping out of college, Milton founded the St. George Security and Alarm Company, which he later sold for $300,000. He then launched a classified ads website called UPillar for selling used cars, but the venture failed a few months in. Milton's third business was D-Hybrid, which retrofitted commercial trucks with engines that could run on natural gas instead of diesel. The company, however, encountered legal issues after Milton claimed that his inventors were taking his intellectual property, leading D-Hybrid to sue the investor and Milton to close the company. Milton's next venture was D-Hybrid Systems, which was similar to the previous company, but with a greater focus on natural gas and hydrogen storage systems. In 2014, Worthington Industries bought 80% of the company as part of their plan to buy several companies in the natural gas fuel sector. And finally, in 2015, Trevor Milton founded Nikola Motor Company with an initial investment of $2 million. But throughout this phase of founding and closing companies, many didn't see the truth of how Milton was raising money for these ideas. Nikola Motors was meant to be the next big thing in electric cars, revolutionizing the EV industry. It claimed to possess groundbreaking technology, including hydrogen and battery cells that would power its trucks. Among the most noteworthy of their designs was the Nikola One, a fully functioning hydrogen-powered truck that Milton unveiled on December 1st, 2016. It was set to turn Tesla over on its head because despite the manufacturing costs being higher, hydrogen vehicles are far more efficient than battery-powered ones. For instance, it can take as little as 5 minutes to fill the tank of a hydrogen fuel cell EV, while it can take several hours to fully charge the battery of a traditional EV, depending on the charging method. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are also better for the environment than cars with physical batteries, as they produce fewer emissions during use. The only reason they are more popular is the lack of fueling networks, which isn't the problem with EVs. To tackle that, Nikola Motors had to come up with not only their hydrogen-powered trucks, but also their own fueling network. The proposal included some ambitious plans, including the opening of 364 fueling stations across the United States and Canada by 2019, and the ability to travel 1 million miles for free. The truck itself was equipped with a large screen for route planning and featured impressive performance specifications, including 1,000 horsepower and 2,000 pounds of torque with a range of 1,200 miles. In terms of safety, the truck had improved visibility and brake force. After about 42 minutes of lofty goals and promises, Milton revealed that the truck would go into production in 2020. We travel back to March 2010. Trevor rallies some local folks, friends and family and church friends to give him money for a new venture. All of these investors are regular, workaday people with families to feed and ends to meet. These individuals poured enormous sums of money into what they hoped would become the truck of the future. His old schoolmate, Rob Chambers, happens to be sitting on $40,000 just then after a successful summer job installing alarms. After a charming sales pitch from Milton, Rob, an inexperienced investor, told him he wanted to invest in dHybrid. There was just one thing. After selling his alarm company, Milton created Lexon, which also did business as upillar.com, the classified ads site. Lexon was also the parent company of dHybrid, so anybody who wanted to invest in the truck company was diverted to Lexon. Several people, including Rob, were told that their money would go towards dHybrid, but the documents would all say Lexon Industries. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, one of the first investors admits, "I've never invested before. I don't know if that's normal or not, but why do we have to do that? And I was sold in the idea that, hey, what's great about this is that you're investing into Lexon. Lexon also controls this website called upillar, so if upillar does well or whatever, then it's an added bonus." Rob invested all of his savings, all $40,000 of it, and not 30 minutes later, the checks had been cashed by Trevor Milton. The paperwork, which Rob checked only after, mentioned nothing about Lexon's activities or the dHybrid trucking company. What it had was the line, "Investor understands that an investment in the company involves substantial risks," along with the understanding that the investor attests that they can afford to lose their money. A few months later, Swift, one of the largest trucking companies in the United States, signed a contract with dHybrid. According to the contract, dHybrid received $2 million up front to test their systems on several Swift trucks. If the systems performed well, it could lead to a deal for more trucks worth tens of millions of dollars for the startup company. As it turns out, Milton's partner Mike Shrout, who devised the tech for the company, was promised a 50-50 partnership, but Milton had gone behind his back to patent the system and name himself as the sole inventor. As money began to pour in, Milton started to spend frivolously, buying boats and travel trailers and hosting parties. Meanwhile, things progressively got worse for the investors and Mike Shrout. There was always work to do, but never any money to execute them. 2 years later, Swift sued dHybrid, alleging that the trucks provided for testing had engine issues and did not perform as promised. Swift also claimed that most of the $2 million advance had been spent on personal use of dHybrid's officers or directors rather than the technology, which was true. dHybrid then countersued, alleging that Swift and its CEO were attempting to steal the company's trade secrets and take advantage of Trevor Milton, a young, inexperienced entrepreneur. Both sides denied the allegations, and the case was settled in 2015, with the details kept private. However, in a letter to Lexon investors, Trevor Milton stated that dHybrid received $1.7 million as part of the settlement. None of that money went into paying back the investors, and Trevor Milton had stopped picking up their calls. Sure enough, after dHybrid became dHybrid Systems, and in a similar fashion, Worthington Industries bought into the promise of Trevor Milton and soon found out that the technology had significant engineering issues, leading to costly recalls. All of this painted a picture of an untrustworthy businessman, but then came Nikola Motors. With just 3 months left for the truck's unveiling, even the engineers couldn't tell reporters how they were going to pull off hydrogen-powered semi-trucks by 2020. They would say, quote, "We have no idea. We have no hydrogen anything that we're working on." That didn't stop Milton from announcing the Nikola One. Behind the scenes, the truck had to be plugged into an extension cord for the headlights to turn on, but for the audience, it would look exactly like the truck of the future Trevor envisioned. Things were going well for a while. After the presentation, Nikola claimed to get over 7,000 pre-orders for the Nikola One, totaling over $2 billion in pre-sales. This led to a provisional order for 800 Nikola One leases by Anheuser-Busch in 2018. In 2019, Nikola announced the Nikola 2, another variation of the electric semi. In 2020, a mid-size electric pickup called the Badger was launched, and a month later, in March 2020, Nikola Motors went public. During this time, Nikola continued to release bite-sized pieces of information about the Nikola One. Among them was a clip released in 2018 of the truck in action. Finally, on September the 8th, 2020, Nikola and GM announced a partnership where GM took an 11% stake in Nikola, and in return, GM would use its manufacturing facilities to start production of the Badger. At this point, Nikola Motors had a market cap of $38 billion. But soon, there came cracks in the facade. In 2018, the clip was found to be fake, It seemed the truck had been towed up a hill and allowed to roll down to give the illusion that it was being driven, while the camera person shot at an angle that made the road look perfectly straight. That video was later sped up to make it seem like the truck was going faster. Milton eventually started to lie unnecessarily, claiming that Nikola had the only off-the-grid headquarters in the world, entirely powered by solar and hydrogen fuel cells. Moreover, since the unveiling in 2016 until GM's partnership announcement in 2020, not a single car was manufactured, let alone delivered. Just days after the GM announcement, the SEC and the Department of Justice launched investigations into multiple fraud allegations against Milton and his company. And the Hindenburg Research put out a scathing article on Nikola Motors and its founder. It became clear that Nikola Motors didn't even have a functioning prototype, let alone the means to pull off manufacturing and distribution. That report became the final nail in the coffin. Within a few weeks, Milton resigned from Nikola, and the company lost its partnership with General Motors. To people on the outside, it seemed like a change that happened overnight. To those involved and the people who had made the mistake of betting on Milton previously, this was a long time coming. Finally, in June of 2021, Trevor Milton was charged with 3 counts of criminal fraud and 2 counts of securities fraud. The trial, which commenced in September 2021, found Milton guilty of lying to investors, and the jury convicted him on October the 14th on 1 count of securities fraud and 2 counts of wire fraud. Milton, however, hasn't backed down, requesting a new trial on the grounds that the jury convicted him due to bad instructions from the judge and because one juror lied to get on the panel. These requests are rarely granted, so as of now, Milton faces sentencing on January 27th, 2023. As for Nikola, the company has now shifted focus to battery electric vehicles, announcing the Tre BEV, a day cab commercial truck with a range of 350 miles and 645 horsepower. To date, the company has delivered 48 units of the Tre BEV. Nikola agreed to pay back $125 million for defrauding investors, and the company's stock price is currently hovering around $2 a share. Despite this, there are still plans to produce a hydrogen fuel cell semi-truck in the future, with a projected release date between 2023 and 2024. However, the question of Nikola's credibility remains, thanks to its founder's history. So, why did Trevor Milton lie? Was it out of pure optimism that he could make things work out eventually? Or was it all just for personal gain? Regardless of the answer, it's clear that Milton was constantly digging himself into a hole. His investors may never get their money back, but Trevor Milton will certainly face time for his crimes against them. What do you think of Trevor Milton's elaborate startup scheme to raise billions of dollars? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more business and entrepreneurial stories. Thank you for watching.